o'clock, so we'll call this North Kootenay Services Committee meeting to order. 10. We acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. Director Watson has an addition to the agenda.
Yeah, I'd just like to add the Castle Fire Smart Municipal Agreement to the agenda.
Director Watson, all those in favor? Motion is carried. So then a motion to adopt the agenda as amended to include the late item. All those in favor? It's carried. And if there are no errors or omissions, the minutes from the January 19th meeting have been received. All right. So I guess we'll put the new item as 7.2. So now we're on staff reports for the service agreement for McDonald Creek. Welcome, Eileen.
Thank you, Chair.
And everyone else. So we've got, it's hard to see the screen, but
You got Lily and Chris for water.
yeah, okay. Julie and Chris and Stuart and Eileen and Christine. All right, so did you want to go over that? Agreement, Eileen? I see.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just give a little brief introduction. The last meeting that we had, I believe, was back in December regarding the agreement, and there was lots of questions that came up during that meeting. So the red line version of the agreement that you see here today addresses those questions, and then also there's of course some administrative corrections, like just correcting sections and adding some definitions and things like that. Something that came up that was sort of a prevalent theme at the December meeting was that there was some confusion in terms of who is in charge of what in terms of roles when it comes to the operation and maintenance of the McDonald Creek water system. And so that was something that we put a lot of thought to after that meeting, and recognized that there's a lot of talk about changing the bylaw and adding language in the agreement, but they're really not public facing documents. And so we added some language in the agreement to address that both parties could do better in terms of public communications. And so maintaining a page on each website, both the RDCK website and the Village of Caslow website, to provide information to the public about who is responsible for what and who they should contact if they have questions and they're living in that system, or potential buyers of property in that system. And that, you know, there's always the possibility of doing public meetings to provide that information, circulating both digital and print material just to provide additional information, brochures, things like that. So that was included in this new version of the agreement. And then I'll just leave it to the committee to ask any other questions for clarification.
Sure, I've got two. Overall, I just want to say the agreement looks great in terms of recognizing it's not a public facing document, but embedding that who's responsible for what information, so it helps the public, it helps us to direct the public. So I think you captured everything that was raised at the last meeting. The two pieces that I'm curious about, one just comes up because we have another item on Thursday regarding the communities that are step down in subdivision. And it relates to this in that, so currently there's 93 connections under this agreement, which I think we're pretty much at. And this isn't something that needs to be in the agreement, but what I'm curious about is that in our French planning work through land use planning, they identify that our subdivision should consider moving upwards of 493 units. Yeah, thanks. That was my reaction. So the part of the consideration is just when you get to that point of development in the area that some indicate is the best area for growth in this region, our region that is, How does that work for noting that we're at the limit? So I'm kind of asking the village of Castle what that might look like. Like I think small subdivisions are possible, but like big development, you would have to upgrade your water system as far as I recall.
I'll rely on CDO Baker, but I would say yes, it would mean my gut would say we would need more upgrades because that doesn't contemplate any growth within village, right? Because we have areas that we might be able to do some infill depending upon whether we get existing the sanitary sewer area expanded, and then that would open up possible development. And with the Castle South, which wasn't contemplated when this was first drafted and formed, yeah, that's going to be major development. And my gut tells me we have to look after our municipal residents before we jump through hoops to expand into the these McDonald Creek area. But your thoughts? Is that
Yeah, nothing to add from me.
okay?
Supplemental to that, that is what I recall in our last discussion was that recent actions would first the village would have to address the phone. So it's just something that I think is more related to the complete communities work that we'll address on Thursday. My other question was, I know we have an asset management plan for the infrastructure we have in Allen subdivision. I'm just curious if the village, and I may have asked this and I forget the answer, we must have an asset management plan for the water system as a whole. And that gets shared with our staff so we can kind of gauge what we might need to consider. That will just be, I think in the agreement it says a year in advance if you're looking for capital.
To my knowledge, we don't share asset management information here at CK specific to the Donald Creek subdivision at this point.
And I know what we might want to if we're gonna look at providing capital in the future, then we can, like, we budget based on the asset management just for the infrastructure in Allen, but of course it's the whole system. So it just might be a consideration for how we budget it long term.
Well, I know, we'll note that we are currently operating under an agreement that's 20 years old. So these things are now being instituted, right? So it's not something that had previously been in the agreement. So,
Yeah, that comment is just related to, planning for the future.
Yeah.
That I recognize it's not just the pipes underground in Allen, it's the whole system and, yeah. But other than that, those were all my questions and I'm good with the agreement. I did not ask the corrected motion. We get there.
oh, okay. Also, I should check.
I can read it if you want.
I'll just check. Okay, that's the question I asked you earlier, Robert, that doesn't apply. Because I'm just rereading the section, it's okay.
Would you like me to move this section?
The only. And have you been able to find it, Robert?
What's that?
Well, just the way the wording is motioned, as worded here, the date I get, but it says the board, but we're not the board. Should it be that the committee recommends to the board?
Through the chair, that's how it's always written. So these motions are what ends up on the board table and your recommendation is to recommend this to the board.
Okay. Yes.
One of the challenges we have is staff haven't had time to fully review this agreement and discuss with our CK staff. So I don't think there's any issue with this with it being put forward to the board. It's just that village staff haven't gone through this agreement, and so it's a little, from my perspective, it's a little premature.
Okay.
And maybe just one other comment, because I haven't heard anyone say it, is, it's a 5-year agreement, and the intention is that during that 5 years, the village take a look at boundary expansion rather than continuing to provide water service to an area outside of our boundaries. And so I think, just want to make sure everyone at the table, staff and elected officials are aware that that is what the Village of Caslo's council is going to be considering. Not right now, but it's on our strategic priorities to take a look at boundary expansion. Just want to make sure that there's no misunderstanding.
Director Watson?
Good to know. Of course, I would have a lot to say about that. It's not embedded in this agreement. I don't recommend I get it embedded in this agreement, but under extension, I would consider a separate conversation.
Well, I don't think that CO Baker was needed to be embedded, just a recognition that that is potential then for the next agreement. Post 5 year. And this one, I think it has to go in there.
Well, I think that was my question initially, was that the connections are limited to 93. So that was what I was asking, is if there's more connections, is the focus on Caslo's needs first? But I think what I'm hearing is the focus would be on a boundary extension, which is quite a.
I know they've been tied, these two are tied together, right? Because we can't tie it to, I don't think you can tie it to something that is a hypothetical, because really it will depend on the next council whether they want to pursue it as well, right? So we can't, unless this council initiates, then it's just, I think, for this group's awareness that CAO Maker raised it. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Just recognizing that it's a 5-year agreement, and the intention of having the 5-year agreement is so that in the interim, the Village of Caslo can decide whether it wants to go through the boundary expansion exploration process. Rather, that's why we're not doing a 20-year agreement right now.
So, great. So, go ahead, Uli.
Hello, I have to admit I'm a bit confused. I think we are here now the 3rd time with this agreement in this committee, and I'm a bit surprised hearing discussions that from we haven't fully reviewed it to should we have different dates or whatever. This agreement has expired, so we are working on an expired agreement mutually. But I think it is urgent that we come to a conclusion with this agreement at some point and are able to sign this off. So I'm just wondering, can we put timelines behind this instead of having us as staff here regularly at meetings and not seeming to make progress on the agreement?
Okay, I'm gonna, not knowing what kind of communication has happened between our respective staffs, because I'm not staff, I can't speak to that part of it. So I don't know whether the amended agreement was provided to CAO Baker for review prior to it landing on this agenda. But obviously there was no discussion that occurred, otherwise the comment would not have been made.
Chris, can you comment on what communication has happened to date?
Yeah, Uli, through the chair, and I might need Eileen to back me up here with some dates. When we last sent out the draft agreement for review. Eileen, do you recall off the top of your head?
Through the chair, this agreement is the exact same agreement that we discussed in December. So it had been sent back and forth several times before that meeting date. And since then, the only changes are the ones marked in red. here, which went on the agenda last week.
And what, if I may, Chair, and what communication has happened leading up to that December presentation of the agreement?
So who was that question for, really?
Sorry, through the chair to Chris, or if Eileen was part of it, Eileen. Sorry.
Through the chair. I would have to go back through email correspondence here. I do see that that we did reach out to Village of Caslow just on some clarification on a billing issue that is related to the agreement a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago or so. But we had not heard back.
But through the chair to Chris, was there not communication several months leading up to the December meeting about this agreement?
Oh, through the chair, certainly, yes. Email correspondence and comments.
But for clarity, the red line version that we're looking at, was that reviewed with municipal staff prior to it landing on the agenda?
Through the, sorry, could I respond to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Through the chair, we had a discussion via email after the December meeting to talk about what the changes would be. And so I included those here, and this was on the agenda for the January meeting, but then that never happened. And so we just touched it up the other day and put it on the agenda. So we haven't had any discussion since last January.
You want us to can we just refer this to the end of the meeting and then that you have a chance to look at the red line? Since
No, I mean,
no,
and the village, forgive me, but the village needs time to take a look at it. You know, we received it through the agenda on Thursday and it sat not read it. So, you know, if the regional district, you know, in all fairness here, I think needs to, the village staff time to read the red line agreement and then ensure that council is on board with the agreement and then proceed. Or alternatively, have it endorsed by the board and then endorsed by council, either way. But yeah, I don't think rushing it and trying to read the agreement right now, so you know.
Sorry, but I was under the impression through the chair that this red line version was shared in January.
Right.
okay.
So if the agreement was discussed and received in December, we made comments regarding communications predominantly in how asset management is integrated. And also the red line changes since that agreement. The agreement we received in December was, as far as what was presented to us, was worked on with the village, and we were asked to approve it at that time. I was the one that asked to get it referred because of the communications and asset management. So those are the changes to the agreement at this point, based on our discussion at the last meeting. And we did not receive it in January because EAO paper wasn't available. So we waited till this month to make sure he was available. And that's why we didn't receive it in January.
Right, I'm looking at the January agenda and it wasn't on, so there was no document on the January agenda.
We were asked to receive it, but because you had indicated COA was away for training, that we didn't get it, but I think staff said that it was shared with, like, it wasn't sent to our agenda, but it was between staff at that point.
So just for my information, and if we do proceed with the recommendation, then it basically that enacts this bylaw. So even if council hasn't had an opportunity to hear about the agreement, once it's done at the regional district, because it's a regional district document, then we're, until signature is applied, then this is essentially it. Is that correct? Regardless of what the village does with it.
Sorry, through the chair, are you asking what, if this can happen with board first, then council, or vice versa?
Yes.
Yeah, through the chair, it definitely can.
Oh, okay.
It can happen, and it can happen either way. It doesn't have to be approved by council before it goes to board. The only inconvenience is that if council does disagree with something and there's an amendment, it'll have to go back to board.
Where I was going with that is just whether it was okay to move the recommendation that is in the agenda. And then we will ensure that it goes on the next agenda, which won't be for tomorrow night, because that won't be enough time for council to consider anything. So it would be our April 28th meeting agenda as soon as it could be considered. So then if we can do it that way, then we'll the recommendation now that's in there, and the date is changed. So Christine has changed it in our package.
The committee recommended the board approve the RTC enter an operational maintenance agreement with the village of Castle for the operation and maintenance of the McDonald Creek water system for the period of 5 years beginning on May 1st, 2026, and that the chair and corporate officer be authorized to sign the necessary documents.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Almost in favor.
Okay, sorry.
I'm scared, so I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so then we'll go on to 6.2. Board information, RCK Parks report and initiatives. Who's going to speak to that?
I asked for it to be
Okay.
agenda, and I just didn't want to, the reason why I did this because at LREC, we were talking more about the overall report and formatting, and I just wanted to identify some of the Glacier Creek items in here and provide some input in terms of the priority setting on them. And I just thought it'd be better as a shared service conversation than at the LREC. So do you want me to go ahead and just discuss those ones?
Yeah.
That's Trisha wants to add anything. Okay, and now I'm where they weren't. One question, sorry, I have a couple of questions. I just want to ask, first of all, the Glacier Creek Campground host recruitment. The ads went out and they had 6 responses and they were pretty good. I think both received that email. However, we did get informed that staff had to change the way they were putting that proposal out, and drastically reduces the ability for applicants to apply. So I just first want to check in around that process. Did we have to change it from a pretty simple one to a pretty onerous one for a campground host? Because we've had a really hard time securing great candidates for this position. And so I do want to raise, can we make it not so difficult and go with the original 6 candidates as review? That's my first question.
Would you like me to respond to that, Chair?
Yes.
I can start that conversation, and then you do have Carrie Gaynor online as well as Stuart Horn. So certainly either of those two may have additional information. So we check in with our procurement staff on a regular basis on what the best process is to manage those recruitment, whether it's for a campground host or many other things we're procuring services for. And the direction is that the actual new system that was put in place more recently is actually being tested out in the Glacier Creek campground recruitment, where it is still a formal process, but not as formal as a different kind of, we'll call it a full RFP process for that particular service. So we do take the guidance from other teams within the RDCK to support those procurement activities properly. So we trust their guidance, and that is the process that we're unfolding right now. We have offered through both our regional parks manager and our admin staff support to anybody who was applying that may have challenges with that particular application process, just to ensure that any of those issues that you might be referring to can hopefully be addressed. But we have taken the feedback and we'll continue to share that. So just through the chair, I don't know if Stuart or Carrie have anything additional they would like to add.
Through the chair, not at this point. I heard about the change in the process late last week, and I don't have the details to be able to speak intelligently to this at this point in terms of what we could have done differently, if anything. I know that there's a lot of changes that we're making on a regular basis based on the advice from our purchasing agent and the work that he's doing to make sure that our processes can't be challenged and that we're doing things appropriately. So, you know, we've been doing some different things. I understand the comment about the onerous nature of some of these applications and how it does sometimes take people out of the running if they don't have the resources or capacity to be able to complete what we ask them to do. So I understand that. And I think that what I can say is that we're constantly trying to find a balance between those two things, but I don't have enough on this specific situation to be able to comment on it.
Carrie, did you have anything to add?
Well, I think at this time I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Watson.
Yeah, so supplemental is that we already had a process in place and we received applicants. So I have a great concern that we might change the process after doing the process and receiving applicants and getting some good ones. To change it at that point when it's just let's try our new process, I have a huge concern with it. It's been very difficult to get a good host at this very remote site, and the issues at that site have been quite drastic. So I'll just register my opposition to the change in the system. Post already doing the RFP, getting candidates in the queue. So that's that one. In terms of the listing of things, there's just a few I wanted to know. It indicates that we have, well, the field management description, I'm aware they changed the funding program, so that's why that didn't go through. The special use permit expired on 2020. I don't know that you would have this information, Tricia, but this part is a condition of the creation of the dam, and we took it over as part of that kind of agreement once we took on parks. So just noting that if we have to keep applying for permits and doing that work, that's not only do we pay for debris management at this part, which is supposed to be, it is done on other reservoirs by BC Hydro, but to do this licensing plus the debris management, which currently is about 6,000 in our budget, I disagree with both. And I would be very supportive of any work to negotiate that we're delivering service on behalf of an agreement for a federal treaty. So the more onerous it is on our end and the more cost of local taxes, I'm not supportive of. So it would be curious to me why we need these permits when the reservoir is owned by BC Hydro and Crown and we're delivering their service.
Yeah, through the chair, you are correct, Director Watson. I do not have that information. There's many things related to parks that I'm continuing to learn. So I appreciate the feedback and will certainly take it under advisement.
Comment on that. Just Tricia, just know that there's and not that you could have been brought to this, but because this is the Duncan Dam area, there's a huge history on it that Joe, I'm sure, carried in his head, and I'd be happy to walk you through some of the advocacy pieces that have been ongoing for over a decade. The debris removal is one of them. But I think for the list here, those for the only two more. Emergency access road, hugely critical. It's a one-way in, and given the capacity of the host and the lack of cell service and management in terms of police enforcement or anything, an emergency exit route would be high priority from my perspective, especially with the virus in the area. And I would say that that's the top priority compared to the campground expansion. We should expand so we can actually ensure emergency exit is secure. So those are my comments. Yeah, Carrie with his hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Carrie.
Yeah, thanks to the chair. So I'll just note, so one of the difficulties with the license of occupation is it was a 25-year license that was with an organization, part of the government organization doesn't exist anymore. So that was sort of one of the issues. I know our planning had been in touch with sort of the province in land acquisition, and there was a request that we would go through sort of a land tenure requisition again, kind of as we had with other license of occupations with the, a new organization in the government. So it used to be with forestry. It's no longer with forestry. It's kind of with lands. And I guess my comment to the access road out, I agree. And, that was part of my initiative a few years ago. I'm just not sure that would be prudent to do that until we have a license. I'm a little fearful to do too much work at Glacier until we have a license, because there was some indication from the Crown at the time that if we kind of, if we can't come to an agreement on a license, then, we don't know yet. So in my opinion, I agree. I think it's really important we have an access road out. And again, that's always been something on, sort of my part of the work plan. But I just think until we do have our license, it might not be prudent to kind of spend that much money into something that, we're still not sure that we would, get a license, right? I assume we would. But again, being with a totally new part of the government, again, we'll just have to, figure that out first, I think.
I have a lot to say about that requiring us the license on this and the treaty, but I'll hold back right now.
So, other than that, the discussion, we didn't need to do anything with this item.
No, I just didn't want to hold up all that for Cambridge celebrations specifics.
Alrighty. So then we will move into new business and the Castle Cemetery Community Development application for discussion. So I think what it precipitated this landing on the agenda is that rather than staff having to remember to prepare a community development application each year, which is subject to approval of the director of the day, which they might not have in future years, we never know, if there was any way that this could become a line item. Seeing email traffic since that it's, from yourself about establishing a service, which then comes with a lot more costs. It would be way more than what we asked for. And I think for the last application that we did for 2 years, it was because we had missed the prior one, and that's why it was for 5, but so it was for 24-25, not 25-26. And that's why a new application was prepared this year.
So I went back as I tracked that in my notes, and the application was approved in 2025. And so that was 2024, 2025, and so you apply again in 2027. And I was bulking them up so that you don't have to apply every year. It's $2,500 a year. And so I went back to when the application was approved, and I noted this is for next application would be 2027.
Okay.
Because you had missed a year, so I did 2 together, which was 2025. So if you've covered those and then we're applying in 2027 for those 2 years.
Okay, so it wasn't 24, 25 that 2025 application was for, which is what I think it was. That's why it was doubled up. Is a catch up from 2024 that was missed.
I just noted that 2027 would be the next application because I allocated in advance and I'm to the penny with 24 communities and $84,000 to work with. So I just noted 2027 was the next application date. In terms of other options, I do know when this started in terms of like I offered to participate in cemetery and provide the grant. We discussed that there are 3 other cemeteries in the area that receive similar funding, right around area at all. And then if we were to look at a service establishment, I would have to include all those other cemeteries to be fair to them. There's actually a Reddit application to look at a green burial process that will be interesting to see what happens with that one. And I've provided funding for mapping and surveying and things like that at Argenta. But Ainsworth, the Johnson's Landing one that's getting created or potentially created in Argenta, do not currently get any funding. Not on a contribution service or anything, and they don't ask for grant funding in terms of community development. So that would just be my consideration is unless there's another way, my understanding is we need a service, we can't just pull it from channel revenue. And that if we were to go down that road, I would want to include those cemeteries to be equal to all of them. But I don't know if Stuart has other ideas. I don't know if we have a channels like economic development. I don't know, but all budgets are subject to director.
Yeah, through the chair, economic development would be a bit of a stretch. I guess the first question is, we do have a dormant service, don't we? I'm pretty sure we do.
We discussed that with Mike at the time, because it's been dormant so long, we would still have to go back through the process is what he indicated. That's what came forward to the committee years ago.
Right, and through the chair, I believe that's an Area D only service. It's not, doesn't include the village, correct?
It's not on our lines or anything. I don't even know how we found it, but it's not functioning. So yeah, like I said, we have to reboot the public consent process on that.
Yep. Through the chair, everything it's just a matter of time and desire, how you want to handle it. If you do want to look into establishing a service, you could request the board look into a service case analysis and bring back something that is either Area D specific or includes both the village and Area D. And there's a cost sharing through the RD service. We've got cemetery services that do both.
I seem to remember there was something in the email, and of course now I can't find it, regarding, no, there was something else, sorry, I'm tying 2 things together, shouldn't be together, so disregard what I was saying, I was putting it together in my head wrong.
Just for context, our own services have to apply to community development when I make applications. So our service have to apply, mosquito service has to apply, like you can't move money, you're taking services without those approvals, so it's.
All right, I think staff was just looking, Arias was looking for something that was a little more, more consistent, so, it sounds like it's probably best to just proceed as we have been doing. Did you have anything?
Yeah, maybe just to comment that I think council's got we need a master plan for our cemeteries. And then 2, council's gonna have to decide whether to accept burials or from the regional district, or if we need to conserve the space we have left for Village of Caslow residents. So yeah, just want to make sure it's out there. That's something council's gonna have to take a look at.
So that's more operational, so I have no idea how much space we've got left available in the 2 cemeteries.
Can I just comment? I mean, that was the reason why I offered to contribute to the cemetery years ago, was that it was brought to my attention that obviously it's in Area D and residents are coming to it and asking to use it. And I offered to provide funding to ensure that we were providing that support, so. If we're providing funding, I'm assuming that those that come to you are treated equally. It was also noted in past notes that you were close to your limit, so I understood that town already might do that. So when we do that, if you want to go through service establishment, you could always bring that forward.
Yeah, there's been no discussion at council about disallowing area D residents from using. It's just something that we might have to consider in the future. If the full capacity limits are reached.
So I just pulled up my annual allocations, and the way I put that one out was that every second year we would apply. So after 2025, it'd be 2027, it'd be 5,000 at that time. So reducing the grant application process, if that's not best and you want to do 2,500 a year, right? You can do that as well. I was actually trying to make it a little simpler without a service establishment, right?
All right, and that brings us to our lead item.
Oh, yes. So this one, I read the report and the service agreement, and I do know we don't have staff available because it was a late request. I only read the board agenda on Friday and Saturday. So I didn't see this one. My main questions were predominantly, as you read this agreement, it says that Caslo is delivering the area T fire smart program as well as Caslo, and from a capacity perspective, that's a concern. From a communication perspective, that's a concern because I do know that obviously village staff are not responsible to communicate themselves. But I tend to read stuff on the paper when it's been Caslo in French areas, which is fine because it's the French areas. But having the area be specific fire smart coordinator is I would not want Caslo to have to take that on, whereas this agreement suggests that. So I think my primary question is this suggesting the Caslo area we share one coordinator? And if that's the case, okay, Stuart shaking his head. No, that's great, because I was more so concerned that there's no way to pull that off.
Yeah, and through the chair, maybe what I'll do is if I could, I'm just gonna read an email that I got from Nora on this as opposed to trying to succinctly explain what she explained to me. So the word Fire Smart Coordinator might be a little confusing in the contract, but it is the recognized job title of the positions in Caslo and with the RD. So there's two roles. The RDCK Fire Smart Coordinator is responsible for overseeing the delivery of Fire Smart programs in the electoral areas and municipalities where the RD is contracted to deliver the programs. Within the village of Caslo, the RD Fire Smart Coordinator provides guidance to the Caslo Fire Smart Coordinator on the delivery of programs and administers rebate programs. Two of the core programs that are delivered regionally are the Wildfire Mitigation Program, formerly the Home Partners Program, and the Neighborhood Collective Program, formerly the Neighborhood Recognition Program. Someone trained and certified as a wildfire mitigation specialist and local Fire Smart representative delivers these programs. The RDCK hires wildfire mitigation specialists on a seasonal basis to deliver these programs in electoral areas. As a trained wildfire mitigation specialist and local Fire Smart representative, the Caslo Fire Smart Coordinator will support these programs for Area D. So there's a little bit of crossover between, but there is two people. The RDCK Fire Smart Coordinator will continue to oversee these programs, oversee the printing or procurement of relevant educational materials, and liaise with neighborhoods and community groups together with the wildfire mitigation specialist to support broadening awareness and community resiliency. Full stop.
Okay, Director Watson.
Yeah, so in the actual agreement, it's like one excerpt, and I can't cut and copy PDF, so I did my best to capture it. It said the village of Caslo is responsible for all printing and area T Fire Smart. And that was the first catch for me, was they wouldn't do that. So there's two coordinators and that doesn't change. That's fine. But I think the municipal agreement is suggesting responsibilities as I read it. Maybe I'm not reading it right, that the village is taking on responsibilities for area T, and I don't, that's my concern. And I know this is on the board agenda, so if you want me to put it there, I can. I just know it's gonna be a really full day and I want CEO Baker to be part of the conversation.
And I will not be at the board meeting, so.
Yeah. I did know that, I forgot, sorry. I think he's reading.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm looking through the Appendix B, which is the municipal responsibilities. I'm trying to, through the chair, if I could, I'm just trying to address Director Watson's specific question. You talked about printed materials as an example.
Yes.
So printed materials in Appendix B, which is municipal responsibility, print all required fire smart materials for use within the village of Caslow and cover all related costs. So it doesn't mention Area D for that. Schedule A refers to
RDCK.
the RD responsibilities, which is print all required fire smart materials for the use within RDCK electoral area D and cover all related costs.
My mistake on that one, good job. I think we'll fix it later and
Okay.
see if there's other things that helps. My main question is just that we're not combining CASO and all of D under one coordinator, because that was too much. One coordinator for D was too much for them at one point, but maybe we're hitting that. Anyways, that was my main concern.
Yeah, and through the chair, Nora, I can have Nora available for the board meeting, or if you've got questions leading up to it that you've got for her just to clarify things in the documentation. If there's anything substantial, I do recommend asking it at the meeting on Thursday, but if you've just got clarification questions because of the wording of the document, because it seems that we could have worded it better, that it's a little bit confusing on the two roles, then Nora can definitely be available. She's full on today, but I think she could probably get back to you tomorrow.
Thank you. And if I send any questions in advance, I'll copy you.
Right, and I don't know from our staff perspective, because having them to come to me if I'm not gonna be at the meeting, I'd like to see them, but if it's something to do with the agreement that has to change, our staff would need to know that.
Okay.
Rather than me be an intermediary, just so that. So is it best to have it goes just to admin or to admin and yourself? If for any possible changes.
Well, RDCK staff, our contact's been Jesse Lay.
Okay,
So Jesse would contact me if there's any changes that need to be made.
okay,
The council's approved the
Yeah.
agreement in principle. So sure it'll be just words, minor words, hopefully that need to get changed if anything.
Thank you.
great. If there was nothing further on that, that brings us to public time. I see one member of the public who is online. If you have a question, you can unmute and ask your question. Another opportunity if you unmute and if you have any questions. All right, well, thanks for joining our meeting. And thanks everyone. I will take a motion. So our next meeting is scheduled for June 22nd at 10 a.m. and take a motion to adjourn at 10:49.
So much.
All those in favor? It's carried. Great. Thanks everyone.
Okay, have a good
Thanks,
rest of your
everyone.
day.
Bye.